Good morning, everyone. It is so good to see you all again this morning for challenge number 2 of our superheroes and supervillains Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge. It did play twice. Yeah, it did play twice. It went live early, and I was like, oh no, what if it cut that part off? So I played it again. You guys got 2 awesome intros this morning. I hope that's all right. So welcome in, everybody, and thank you to Mr. Jason for that excellent video editing daily creative challenge. I am so excited that we are doing those this week. It is always a pleasure to watch and to see your smiling face and to learn from you. So thank you so much for that awesome broadcast. And before I kind of jump into what I'm going to be doing today, first of all, my name is Voodoo Val, and I'm going to be your host, like I said, for the Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge. But I'm not the only one who's going to be online today designing and creating for you. So I'm going to pop over here real quick to our schedule and kind of go over what you folks can expect from the day. We had Brandon Gross up first thing this morning at 7:30 a.m. Pacific time doing the getting started in Adobe XD, which is always a pleasure to watch. Like I said, we just had Jason Levine up with the Video Daily Creative Challenge, which I loved. I am here at 9 a.m. with the Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge, and Zaylee Barclay is going to be on after me doing a video editing segment. So that's kind of a cool segue. If you folks jumped in for the Video Daily Creative Challenge and you're still working on your challenge, or you're working on video themed personal projects, right after me is a whole video editing segment. So you can kind of jump back in and get some help from some video savvy folks if you like. Julia Masalska is going to be right up after Zaylee with the Illustrator Daily Creative Challenge, followed by Ashley Armstrong, who's doing an editorial design segment today, which is super cool. It looks like we got Peter Del Tondo back with the Adobe XD Daily Creative Challenge around 2 p.m. Pacific time, followed by the Draw Along with Kyle T. Webster, and then I'm going to be back with my new friend Emmy to round out the day for the Design Off themed around things you'd take with you to a deserted island. If you're stranded on an island, what would you have in your bag, or what would you want to have in your bag? You guys know I'm going to get super sci-fi with that, so I hope you folks stick around, tune in for that show and all of the other awesome design segments that we have coming up. If you are over on YouTube and you're wondering who all of these people I'm about to greet are, like Cornell and Montel, Sean, Valder, Sam Peterson, Chad, Mia, Monir, it's good to see you, my friend, Anya. All of these folks are over on behance.net/live, so definitely head over to Behance so I can see your comments, so I can greet you, so I can welcome you into the stream, and so you can make some cool friends, because this is where the party's at. So yeah, YouTube folks, come on over, join the gang, it's going to be awesome. And yeah, without further ado, I'm going to kind of jump into what the Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge is and how you can get involved with me. So I'm going to pop over here to the landing page. If you need information on how to get started and where to find all of the resources, how to get back to all of these recorded videos that we do when they're no longer live, you can go to behance.net/challenge/Photoshop, and this is where you can scroll down. You can double check the date here to make sure you're on the right page. You get a little 1 through 4 description of kind of how you can jump in to the challenges, and every morning all of our challenges are going to be released one by one. So yesterday we did a mood board challenge where we chose kind of between the theme of superheroes or supervillains, and I showed you folks how to use art boards and things to kind of create a really nice mood board to prepare for the upcoming challenges. If you did not do that challenge, since this is kind of a file that we will be returning to periodically through the other challenges, fear not, you can always come here to the page and download that file that I created for you by hitting this Get Started button. You'll get an array of colors for superheroes and villains, a font that I chose that I thought was pretty cool, and a brief description of how you can fill in your own information into that mood board if you like. And you can also watch the video if you missed that and want to see how I did that. And then for today, you can always return after this broadcast is over and hit watch video here to rewatch this segment. And you can also hit this get started button to download starter file number 2 so that you can work alongside me today. And then if you want, you can head over to the Discord to share your work. So if you go to this link, bit.ly/ps Discord, making sure to capitalize that P and S so you get to the right server, it'll take you to this nifty page, which I will share with you. So as you can see, there's people who've already been posting their mood boards and sharing them here in the current challenge channel up here on the left-hand side. Not to be confused with the Creative Challenge channel. I know some people go to this channel and wonder, why is this read-only? Why can I not post? The Creative Challenge channel is where members of our team basically post the image showing what we're going to be working on for the challenge for that day, a link to where you can get the starter file, where you can watch the live broadcast, and also where you can find the VOD. But if you scroll down a little farther into the feedback section and you go to current challenge, that's where people are actually posting their work. So we got Ariana in here posting some awesome stuff, Mia More Luna posting some stuff, which I'm absolutely loving. This one from Pat I thought was really cool. I love all of the colors that kind of coincide with the colors you actually chose to use. I thought it was really artfully displayed, which was really cool to see. And I also love all of the fonts and everything that you chose for this. So it looks like he just took a screenshot of his Photoshop region to show all of his cool artboards that he put together. We've got some really, really great ones that I've just thought were really cool. It looks like, who is this from? Mia More Luna did a villains board that has colors that they love, plus some textures that they intend to use throughout the challenges, some awesome kind of reference images, and some fonts that they'd like to use. And this is basically what we did yesterday. I'm going to scroll through all of these and kind of highlight what everybody worked on. It was a lot of fun. I love this Pirates of the Caribbean one here from Eddie. I think that it's really cool that all of your images here work well together. And another point, yesterday I kind of chose colors that I liked and then I chose reference images afterwards. It looks like it's possible that Eddie may have sampled some colors from reference images he chose first. Otherwise, you did a really great job of choosing these colors to match. But that's also a cool way to do that. If you find an image, maybe it has nothing to do with the subject matter of your project, but it has some really great colors that really speak to you. You can always sample colors from there and then add them to your color palette, which is pretty cool. So thank you all so much for participating. Key has posted so many cool things. Sangeeta, I love your heroes and villains thing here. This is really cool. And yeah, so that's what we did yesterday. And then today we're going to jump into emblem design, because every superhero or villain needs kind of a calling card emblem, right? Let me see. I'm going to scroll through here and see what everyone is saying. Don't we have to make a project? Yes, Akanksha, I hope I said that right. We are going to make a project today. I'm about to jump into it and I will walk you through what we have planned. So I'm gonna page down here and pull up my Photoshop, or actually I'm gonna retouch on this download button here. If you are on the landing page still, or you need to go to behance.net/challenge/Photoshop, hit this get started button, because that is the file we are about to use, and it looks like this. So it'll say starter file 2, it says challenge number 2, design an emblem for a hero or villain, or use one of Val's sketches below. Use shapes and layer styles to make it appear as if it's made of realistic material. I always like to tag on that little bit of challenge to the end of any time we're creating like an icon or doing any sort of like graphic art or logo design during these challenges, because I always think it's cool to create an icon or an emblem of some kind, and then also take it a little step further for those of you who prefer a little more detail than flat design. So I have done 2 little sketches here. You're not required to use these. You folks can feel free to design your own, but I just created some interesting shapes that I thought resembled existing kind of like villainous or hero themed icons. And I'm gonna choose both of these, and I'm gonna convert them to smart objects, and I am going to show you how I would like sort of clean them up from a sketch or concept, as you were, and how I make them look a little more realistic. So what I'm gonna do first of all is, if you do a sketch and you decide, I don't want to really use shapes, I really just love what I have created with my brush, or maybe you have sketched something out in Adobe Capture and you've imported it to your Adobe libraries. However you do it, feel free to do that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my layer over here, and I'm going to turn my opacity down just a smidge, and I'm going to take my pen tool and start on the first method of creating a shape over this. So if I, for example, wanted to do the shield type icon that I've got here, I could do something like snag my pen tool, like I said. I can just go through, depending on how symmetrical I want this, and I could, start making shapes around it. You can also, when you're creating points with the pen tool, you can click and you can hold shift and you can get like a perfect, awesome little line going on there. And I can come around and I can click and drag if I want to round out some of these shapes. Maybe I will do that more like this so that I have kind of a straight curve there, like so. And then go up and kind of create a shape that way. Once I'm done using the pen tool to create a shape, I can come up here and I can just click shape to make myself a shape. And what I want to do actually is get the outline for this shape and not have a solid shape here, because I want to make an icon that you can see other elements through the transparency of the negative space in that design. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to open my properties panel, and you can kind of change the density and feather here, or you can come up, like, let's see, what am I going to do here? I'm going to select my shape layer, actually. I'm going to come up to the top here. I'm going to apply a stroke. I'll use red, what the heck. That would be kind of cool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to crank the fill down on this so that I can hopefully... so I can crank the fill down, or I can actually change the fill color, or change that fill to nothing if I want. And I'm going to crank up the stroke on this. So now I have a shape that's filled with nothing, and I have a stroke that I have bumped up so that I have the outline of that shape, which is really cool. And this allows me to kind of create shapes that are adhering to any sketches that I have, but get an outline of them without having to go in and work destructively, for example, erasing the center out of a shape or something like that. So this gives you a very quick, very clean outline of what you're doing. And then if I want to, I can also come in with my pen tool and I can trace this. Let me actually turn my stroke off and turn my fill on. Oops. Let me do that. I'm going to do a new shape before I actually change those, because I don't want that to change what I've already created. So with my pen tool, I'm going to come in and I'm going to make a new shape here. And I'm just going to do like a quick lightning bolt kind of thing. Boom. There we go. I'm going to make a shape out of that. And then I'm going to change that shape color. If I go to my shape tool, I can come in. I'm going to leave the stroke off of this one, and I'm just going to change it like so. And I can select all of these, and I can convert it into a group, and then convert that group into a smart object, which is my personal preference for how to create shapes like that. Because if I want to, if I just right-clicked that and convert, like, selected all of my layers, did Control G to make it a group, right click that, and then create smart object. But I can also convert to layers all over again. So I can open that group and I have those shapes, which is really, really awesome for those of you who are working with multiple shapes at a time and you want to make sure that you can go back to what you've created. So that's really cool. Another way that you can kind of get in and edit this a little bit is after you have created your shape, you can do things like free transform. If I want to say Control T, I can come in and I can select from scale, rotate, skew, perspective, distort, all of these fun things. I can even go into warp if I want to, and start editing from here and moving these points around. But sometimes when you use these free transform settings to edit things, sometimes you don't get exactly the kind of warp or kind of distortion that you're really looking for. So an alternative to this is also using puppet warp, which I'm going to touch on very briefly because we don't have all of the time in the world today, and I still want to add some cool textures and bevel and embossing to this. So I'm just going to real quick show you. I'm going to hide my sketch layer and I'm going to center my little icon that I have created. And I've got my smart object ready to rock here. So if I go to edit and then I scroll down and go to puppet warp, you'll see it adds a really cool mesh to my smart object, which I can actually edit. If you don't see your mesh when you go to edit and hit puppet warp, you may need to come up here and actually click show mesh because it's possible that it's going to be hidden from view when you first open this puppet warp tool, especially if you've used it before and checked that box, or if you've never used it before, never opened it, you may need to check out some of these settings. I can change the density of my mesh because all of those little points in that mesh are going to allow me to move things around and warp it as I see fit. I can put more points on it, which I don't recommend because this is a pretty simple icon. I assume yours are probably going to be fairly simple as well. And so you don't really need that many points. The default is normal, but I'm actually going to turn it to fewer points since this is such a simple shape. And what I'm going to do is with my cursor, I'm just going to come through and I'm going to start adding points. Okay, now you cannot add points outside of the mesh when you're using the puppet warp tool, but you can put points super, super close to the edge of the mesh so that you can edit them. And if you place a point that you don't particularly want, all you have to do is hold Alt and hover over it. Your cursor will turn into a little scissor icon, and you can just click it and it will remove it. And then I can come around and I can start editing this as I see fit, which is cool. We can turn this into an icon with like a totally different vibe. Maybe I want the ends pulled out like that. Maybe I want the bottom of this to like really be pointy and drug out. It's really according to what you prefer. And another cool thing that's actually pretty cool is, remember we held Alt to delete a point? You can also hold Alt and hover just outside of the point for the rotate if you'd like to rotate. And your rotating settings can also be changed. So you can change the intensity of degrees, and you can also change whether it's auto or fixed. You can also go into mode and change from rigid to normal or distort. And I find if you want some really dramatic things happening with this puppet warp tool, if you change it to distort, it gets really wonky. I don't know if this is the kind of thing that you will want for your particular design, but I think it's fun because of how dramatic you can get that rotate going. So just want to touch on that just in case it's something that you're interested in. I hit escape just now to kind of wipe all of the changes that I made with the puppet warp, but if we go back into that, I will show you real quick. You also have buttons here at the top to either cancel the puppet warp or commit the puppet warp. So if you would like to keep the changes that you have, you can hit this check button or you can hit enter on your keyboard. And if you don't like the changes that you've made, which I'm not really going to keep them because I like my emblem as is, you can say cancel puppet warp here, or you can hit escape like I did earlier. So I'm going to hit escape. I'm going to keep my cool little puppet warp thing here. And I am going to change the color actually of my little icon here. And you can do this a lot of different ways. You can come up to the fill and change colors this way. I have turn this into a smart object and kind of deviated from the original shape that it was. So if you find yourself in this situation where you've combined kind of two shapes into one part, another thing you can do is, since it's a smart object and we're working non-destructively, you can open the hue and saturation if you like. That's another way to change colors. I open that by saying Control U, and I can change it however I like. I can bump the colors around and do whatever I want to do. Maybe I'll make this kind of a blue color, and I'll make it a little bit dark because that's kind of cool. It would also look good as like kind of a gold color too, now that I think about it, because it's kind of like a lightning bolt kind of thing we got going on here. Maybe I'll make that a little bit brighter, a little more saturated. Maybe we'll go with this. It's kind of a greenish. There we go. That's kind of more of a gold. And I'll say okay. Now what we can do is, first of all, every time we add a filter to our layer, because it is a smart layer, we actually have all of the different transformations that we've put this shape through, this smart object through, listed here, and I can hide them at will, which is really cool. I'm going to double click my layer here outside of the region where the title is, so I can open up the layer styles panel, and I'm going to add some 3D effects, some beveling and whatnot to this. So I'm going to come down here, I'm going to click bevel and emboss, and I am going to just experiment with the depth and all of this. You guys really can get in here and kind of do what you want. I typically like kind of a hard chisel if I'm trying to make something look like metal, like I'm doing today. I like to crank the depth up so that it's very dramatic. And I change the size a little bit so that I have kind of a wide area on top of that bezel, just so that I can make it look like it's kind of like some kind of enamel pin or carved out of gold or something. And the simpler the shape you're working with, I find the better it kind of looks here, because if you have tons and tons of details, you're going to get some weird chiseling if you do this chisel hard setting here. And there's a lot of stuff that you can mess around with in here. You can mess with the angle of the light. You can change this little dot here to have the light cast on this item in different ways. I'm going to keep it at 90 degrees because I like that. Let me double check or double click this again and jump back in here. You can also change the gloss contour, which is kind of interesting. So I can come in here and I can change it manually and mess with this and do my own thing. Let's cancel that. Or I can hit this little drop down menu and I can change to a lot of different kinds of preset contouring that can be pretty interesting. I am going to leave it on what it already has regularly because that's good enough for me. And then if you like, you can also change the highlight and shadow modes. You can change their colors, you can change their blending modes even, and you can also change their opacity. So if I want my highlights to be really bright, I can crank them up. If I want my highlights to be blue for whatever reason, I can do that, and so on and so forth. I'm going to keep it at white and I'm going to keep it at 50, and I'm just going to say okay. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a slight texture over this. I'm going to Control T to transform my item and make it slightly larger here, like so. And I'm going to say okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my libraries because I have some cool textures that I like to use in my libraries. You can literally use whatever texture you want. You could take a picture of the texture of a piece of paper on your desk and use it for this if you like. Or if you prefer not to use textures, that's up to you. If you added textures to your mood board yesterday, you can use one of those. But I love this metal texture. It's a metal texture that I return to all the time. I've had it for a really long time. I got it from Adobe stock. And I'm just going to kind of put this over the top of my piece here. I'm going to line it up to make sure that like the lighting on that texture that I'm using kind of lines up with the lighting that I've given my item. I'm going to say enter. I'm going to use my favorite thing, which is clipping masks. Right click that texture. I'm going to say create clipping mask, and it's going to clip only to the shape of what's underneath it. And actually that looks cool in my opinion. That already looks pretty neat, even without the the overlay or any of the blending modes applied that I'd like to do with this, because it looks like it's carved out of metal, and it's got the lighting lined up pretty well, so it coincides with our our bevel and emboss pretty well. But I am going to experiment with some of these blending modes just to kind of give you guys an idea. This in and of itself looks actually pretty cool. This color burn, it looks kind of neat. It almost looks like, since we're doing superheroes and supervillains, it almost looks like this was a superhero at one point, but maybe they've disappeared, or maybe they've turned to the dark side a little bit. Like, that's actually pretty cool. So I might leave it on this. And then, just to add a little bit of my own pizzazz, I'm gonna paint in some vibrant highlights and shadows on my own. So I'm gonna make a new layer with Control-Shift-N. I'm gonna right click, I'm gonna make this a clipping mask too. And I'm gonna use my mouse for this because I know not everybody has a stylus. I'm gonna hit my brush, I'm gonna select this yellow color, I'm gonna crank it up to a different gold over here with my color picker, and then I'm gonna draw a line over. I'm holding shift just to keep it straight. And I'm adding some highlights just because I kind of wanna make it a little more crazy. You know, up at the top here, I can put that on a blending mode as well. If I scroll through here, maybe like an overlay. Yeah, overlay looks cool. I can turn my opacity of my brush down by clicking 1 through 0 on my keyboard to increase or decrease that by intervals of 10. So maybe I'll go down to a 5, make my brush a little larger, and then I will kind of very subtly like drop in some color here. And just kind of dabbing a little bit of light every once in a while, because I think that looks cool. So that's how I make a emblem kind of have a realistic sheen to it, give it like kind of a realistic twist, and I can't wait to see what you folks make. So that's all the time I have for you folks today. I am cutting it pretty close here. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you all, and I will see you for another challenge tomorrow morning. Adios, folks.